Welcome, and in this lesson, we're going to talk about the objective, locate, and interpret system log files and journals. So first, let's go ahead and take a look at our traditional log file system. If you are logged into your linuxacademy.com lab server, head into cd/var/log. Now make sure you're either using sudo or root. Generally, most of these usually have read permissions available to them, but we are going to be performing commands that require sudo privileges or privileged privileges for the root user. So inside of here, generally speaking, what we have is our system log file. We have messages for our system log. We have an HTTPD directory, which is for our Apache logging. We have cron file logging. We have most recently logged in users log. We have secure, which shows SSH attempts into the system. So let's say I wanted to view these log files. I could use tools like less, the less editor, or less reader, and I can parse through my messages, my system log message. And I see a lot of kernel messages in there from my boot up. I could also use something like tail-f to view all messages that are being appended. So what happens is tail-f is showing the last 10 files. But if you notice here, it doesn't take us back to our command prompt. So what this means is it's going to actually, as messages are written to our message log file, it'll display in real time on our system. Now this is useful if we're watching Apache logs or if we're trying to see if users are attempting to log into our system. We could do a tail-f on secure. We can see users in real time as they attempt to connect to our system, and it'll just continuously add that to it. And so that's where, cd/var/log is where our traditional log files are stored and located. And again, it's just plain text log files. So I can look at those in any way that I want. I can just cat and dump everything to standard output. I can use the less reader, less tool. I could use a tail-f. Now tail-f you're going to want to use because tail shows you the last 10 lines. I can also say tail-n to show me the last 20 lines of the messages instead of last 10. So that's what -n does, is it's going to dump the last 10. I can look at the top messages. So if I used head, I could do head messages, and I can look at the first 10 lines of that specific file. Now these tools aren't unique to reading system log files. They're just tools that are commonly used for reading system log files. And again, you can do head-n and say, give me the first 50 lines of a file. And of course, we need to specify the file name that we need to do that for. And so that'll give us the first 50 lines of a specific file. So this is really the traditional logging on a system. This logging is usually powered by rsyslogd or syslogd. And what that does is it allows programs like HTTPD to create log messages and log files. So for example, our HTTPD program has its own directory here. And I can view all log files that are associated with that as it comes in real time, or I can just view the log files. For journal D can be found here. We can do man systemd-journal D. And this shows us everything we need to know and also the additional man pages we need to know for using the journal D tool. Now, what the journal D, or when we use it, we're going to use the command journalctl. But what the journal D service, journal daemon service does, it logs all events on our system. So if our kernel is emitting messages or events, our journal D is going to log it. If our syslog is emitting events and logging files or logging information to our regular log files, it's all going to go through our journal D. So we can actually view all log information that we need to view using the journal D tool. So the journal D tool is actually called journalctl. So I can do a journalctl, and that's just going to dump all of our information that's inside of our journal daemon. Now, one thing to know is that all of these contents are since this current boot. For example, whenever we reboot, our journal D is removed, or the contents of our journal D. So by default, journal D is actually not persistent. All the contents are located inside of the run, log, and then journal directory. And this is actually where our journal D messages or events are stored. Now, if you didn't know this, the run file system really is temporary. It's ephemeral storage, which means when we reboot the machine, that directory and everything in it is lost. It's basically temporary data. So if we wanted to maintain persistent storage on our journal D, we'd have to go inside of our etc directory, then our systemd directory, and you can see here we have a journald.conf configuration file. So if we open our journald.conf configuration file, we see that we have this storage option here. All we have to do is uncomment this and change this to persistent and do a reload on our systemd daemon, and it will automatically or make it so that all of our storage is persistent. And it does that by changing where it stores our journal D events. So currently the journal D events, like I said, are in run log. When we change it to persistent, it stores it in the /var/log journal directory. And that area is persistent. What rotates those log files usually is log rotate, the log rotate tool, which is located inside of our etc directory under log rotate. Now that's actually beyond the scope of this objective. What we're going to do is we're going to learn more about the journal CTL. So essentially any event that is emitted on our system, whether it's writing to a log file or syslog writing to a log file, whether it's coming from systemd, any event is really able to be viewed through the journal CTL program. So I'm going to show you a few tips and tricks. With our journal CTL program, I can do a -n, and that's going to show the last 10 lines of our journal CTL. Now, if you look at it here, we're seeing messages that we would normally see from our secure log file. If I did a tail/var/log secure, we're going to see this looks exactly the same as this. And that's because, like I said, anything that goes through events on our system, regardless of log file, is all being logged in our journal daemon. And we can view all of that. It's essentially an aggregated tool for viewing all of our journal logs. So journal-n really allows us to show the last 10. It's the same as -n for tail or head. But if I did an X, what we would see here is the last 10 lines. We'll do a journal CTL-XN, and it's going to show our last 10 lines. And what the -X flag does is it provides additional explanation texts from the message catalog if they're indeed available. So it provides a little bit more information. Now, like I said, it's only available if there's in fact additional explanation text from our message catalog. So we can use journal CTL-F, and what that's going to